Hey guys, so today I'm going to do a video on my top 3 mass market tarot decks. My favorites. So this is not like top 3 for beginners, top 3 for advanced. This is just my personal favorite tarot decks that are available mass market. And I actually, incidentally, I feel like I usually have this, but I have an honorable mention. I think I'll do that one at the end. So we'll just jump right into it. These are in a particular order. Number 3 is the Gustave Dore Tarot, which I'm probably pronouncing incorrectly, but I do believe he's Italian? I don't know. And this deck is still in order because all I've done is sort of like a deck study with it so far, and I had it in order. I haven't read with this yet. Full disclosure, sorry. The reason it is my favorite, one of my favorite mass market decks, is because I just love, first of all, these are etchings, okay? They're not drawings, they're etchings, which is insane to me and makes me appreciate the artwork that much more. Secondly, I loved how, let me zoom in a little bit. There we go. I loved the different, the art comes from a variety of works. So if you go to buy this deck online, some sellers will say that it's biblical, which is not incorrect. There are pictures that came from by biblical illustrations that he actually made for a Bible. And then there are others, like this one, for example, which some sellers don't mention because it's not all from his biblical work. But there's also some from, you know what, let me look up the name real quick because I wrote this down. So he has some works included in the deck here that were from Perrault's fairy tales. Again, not pronouncing this correctly. I believe Perrault and Rabelais were French, which I could also be completely off base on. And I'm sure someone out there will correct me. But Perrault's fairy tales, he did illustrations for that. Oops. Sorry for that shaky camera. And then he also has illustrations from Gargantua and Pentagrel. Oh, I really should have looked up how to pronounce this before I did the video, but I did not. And even a work by Balzac and Ariosto, I believe. So and others, but including, actually, there's another book he did, which was just a study, not a study, but it was just a book, an art book on like life in London, I think London. And if I'm not mistaken, if the book wasn't just an artistic representation, it might have also had narration in it, but he illustrated it with scenes from everyday life. Isn't this a great tower? Look at that tower card. The dramatics, really. So I like this for the variety. Kind of, oh my god, I flipped right to it. This is my favorite world card. My favorite world card of all my decks. And also from any flippers I've ever seen. This is from Dante's Inferno. Oh, that's one I had forgotten to mention. But it's Dante and Beatrice in Paradise, basically. It's actually not from Dante's Inferno, it's from Dante's Paradiso. So But yeah, my favorite world card. So you can see not all the images are biblical. There are also images from fantasy, images from everyday life. And I also really liked, I thought I wouldn't, but I really do like the black and white. And also kind of sepia too. It's not just black and white, which probably helps me accept it as a deck that's not in color. So I haven't, like I said, I haven't used this deck much yet. But the reason it made it into my top 3 is because in going through and studying each of the images and doing the research on all of the images, I've really found myself connected to the I don't know, I guess the energy of the deck. Sometimes I can't explain why I like a deck as much as I do. But I just felt immediately more drawn to this deck than to some of the mass market decks I've had much longer. So this is why that one made it into my top 3. Could be the art style too. If you like decks, or if you're the type of reader who's very people-centric, that's a great deck for you. Even the aces have people figures in them. So it's cards communicate really easily with each other. My number 2 favorite mass market deck is the Everyday Enchantment Tarot. Again, like the Dore Tarot, this is because in going through the cards, I felt an immediate connection with the cards, which I cannot say for all of my decks, even some of the decks I've been using regularly. I'm going to open to a minor arcana, okay? And you'll see how much effort Poppy put into this entire work. It's so moving, and I feel so, this is a good one, privileged to have something that meant so much to someone. And you can go ahead and pause here if you want to read it. And I'll stop on this card when we get to it in the deck. But it's just the amount of thought that went into just everything. The cards are so layered. And look at these beautiful backs. It's all of her own artwork. It's just, I don't even have words for it. Again, this deck is in order because I was doing a card by card study with it. So I like to leave them in order for that. Make some more space here. Every single card has a spirit and an animal in it. Even the detail down to the figures having, sorry, I love a good judgment card, so I always show it. I always like to look at that one. Living beings have this blue aura around them that Poppy drew. And I'll show you what's cool about that is that even in the High Priestess, if you can see, her books also have that outline around them. because isn't the High Priestess giving birth to knowledge? Also wins by miles for diversity out of many of my other decks. It's very hard for me to overlook a lack of diversity in a deck. I should actually probably do a video on all of the decks in which I do have to overlook that. And why I am able to. But that's a big factor in me even buying a deck. Okay, so here's the Two of Coins. And there's just so many different layers of balance in this one picture, in this one painting, right? You have a fruit salad on one side, this crazy dessert on the other. You have both like working class workers, and you have the, I mean, elite. I mean, who really needs to, does your dog really need to sit at the table with you inside of a restaurant or not? I mean, we all know who does that. And then you have just juggling of duties. He has like a million people calling for him at one time. There's just so many layers to everything. It's crazy. Like even here, figuring out how to pay. It'd be great if I didn't cut it out of the picture. I love the Seven of Coins too. Possibly one of my favorite Seven of Coins because I love how it shows somebody actually in the midst of their prosperity and also still contemplating. It's not like someone who looks like they could just be bored in their garden. So this one got my number 2 favorite mass market deck because again, I just appreciate it more than any of my other, probably more than any of my other decks. I also like the consistency in the court cards. Like the pages are, I believe they're actually even always children. And they're always, oops. They're always learning or creating from start, or like, it just very much gives you the sense of initiation. And I just love her. I just love her. The guidebook is, I mean, worth a read from cover to back. So that's my number 2 favorite mass market deck. My number 1 favorite mass market deck is the Hoodoo Tarot. The Hoodoo Tarot is my most cherished deck because it was a birthday gift from my boyfriend one year. He's not into this sort of stuff, and he went out of his way to go to the bookstore, stand in the pretty it's a pretty sizable aisle of cards actually that we have, and Google them and look up the reviews and pick one that he thought I would like. And he knows, I'm going to zoom out a little bit so you can pause and read part of the guidebook if you'd like. So here's a major arcana, and then go to a minor. Oh, actually, even better, court cards. Court cards are they're not really reversed, but the mothers are your kings, the fathers are your queens, and the daughters are your knights, and the sons are your pages. It's a matriarchal deck, but the meanings of them haven't really changed. They are sort of tailored to this culture, but you can read them if you'd like as the typical Rider-Waite meaning, with like a little twist on it. And every card is tied into, this is my favorite Nine of Wands. Every card is tied into the history and culture and practice, and it's just really well done. It's really well explained. And I love working with this deck, especially around like autumn or fall. It's not really a black and white, it's not even really a sepia deck. It does have color to it, but it's very muted. Love this Three of Coins. Sort of your consultation of the expert. Oh my god, I love her so much. Interesting take on the Eight of Baskets. It's basically, in this depiction, there's an understanding that what you're walking away from doesn't even want you anymore. The court cards could be a little challenging. Love this Justice card. I think this is my favorite Justice card. If you can see, it's basically like making justice your bitch. So the court cards could be sometimes a little challenging because they're so I want to say they're almost so specific, but I don't know, they're not as vague as other decks court cards can be. So this is a great, it is a great deck. It's a great deck, especially if you're interested in learning about hoodoo. And I mean, obviously it's not all encompassing, but it's a great way to like kind of like stick your foot in the door there. My African ancestors did not come to the US by way of the southern states in this time period even, but I do have Native American ancestry, and it's such a part of like the collective African experience that I feel it's important to me to be knowledgeable on this and to be respectful and make space for it in my sort of data bank, I suppose. And I feel very connected to spirit when I use this deck. So even if this wasn't part of your personal ancestry, I think it's well worth the energy to use and learn and buy this deck. So that was my number one favorite deck that's mass market for personal reasons. And lastly is my honorable mention deck, the Spellcaster's Tarot. Why? Because this is just my deck. It's kind of like if you were listing your favorite people in the world, you wouldn't leave out like a parent that you're close to or a sibling that you're close to, even if they're probably not your favorite personality in the world. It's not really my artwork style at all. The guidebook is like, well, the guidebook is good. It's full color. It has a lot of information in it. It gives you like these divinatory and reversed and magical uses, which is great. I actually love that. So maybe I do like the guidebook. But it's definitely not narrative. So if you like a narrative guidebook, like the Everyday Enchantment Tarot guidebook, this is not that. But it does give you a really good idea of the card. Another thing is that the swords are fire, and you really only notice it in the Ace of Swords. Otherwise, oh, and I guess maybe this one too. But I mean, otherwise you could really not even notice or tell. Like, I could easily see this being air. But the reason I love this deck is because it is like my parent deck. It was my first tarot deck. And I, like, even though it doesn't have too many of my favorite cards, has at least one that I can think of. But it has so many layers in each card, and every time I think of, oh, wands are air, but again, you can't really tell, and it's also fall in a lot of the wands cards, so it still seems fiery if you don't want to switch it up. But yeah, it has so much layered into the card that it just connects for me. I also feel like it displays those cards that oftentimes go various ways with their meaning, like the Three of Wands, I guess, is an example. Sometimes it shows someone just looking, sometimes it shows someone actually in action. I feel like this deck does that really well, which is balance the various meanings into one card. So here, like, you have for the Three of Pentacles, you have the teaching, you have the sort of group efforts here. The Six of Pentacles or Six of Cups is a good one too, but I think I passed it already. If I find the Three of Wands, I did flip through this deck before when I was using it in my only 5 decks for Lent, I think I did. So I might have mentioned it there. Oh, here it is. So here in the Three of Wands, it kind of reminds me of the Seven of Pentacles, but you have it's a little more elemental in this deck, but you have the sending and receiving. So it's synonymous with the ships. Are they coming or are they going? Probably, I mean, both. I like that Six of Wands too. Oh, here's the Six of Cups. It has the generational aspect, the reminiscing, the sharing, the planting, the exchange. It's just a great, every card is a great all-around card. I really love this deck. But it didn't make it, it was my honorable mention because it's almost like irrelevant when I'm doing lists, because it's just, it's like how the Mona Lisa is priceless. It's priceless because it literally does not have a price tag. It hasn't been assessed. Was it the Mona Lisa? Some famous painting, at least years and years ago when I looked it up. But yeah, it's not that it's not of value, it's just that you've never put a value on it because it's priceless to you. So that was my honorable mention. And those are my favorite mass market decks, and I'll leave the links below. I'll leave a link to my top decks for beginners. Those are not just mass market, so if you're really only looking for mass market and you are a beginner, I'd probably recommend the Spellcaster's Tarot. Not the easiest. Again, I'd get a deck out of my top beginner decks video, but if you, because I do have a couple I think I have a couple mass market ones there. I think I do. But as far as this video goes, if you're a beginner, probably the Spellcasters, which I guess is cheating because that was just my honorable mention, or the Everyday Enchantment if you're ready to take on like a slightly heavier but extremely thorough and accessible deck. I would go with the Everyday Enchantment Tarot. I hope you liked these decks as much as I did, and I'll see you next time.